Hey there, in this video I'm going to show you how I made this cozy king bed. I'll go over 3 topics in this king-size bed build that were all actually inspired by you. I put polls out on Instagram and YouTube. Let me know what you want to see in my upcoming videos, and I'll make it. I'll make the videos for you. So today, we'll be covering my design process, wood selection and flattening wide boards by hand, and we'll end with a ridiculous segment called Will It Squeak? I'm sorry in advance for what I've done to your question, Dinkle's Workshop. Each chapter is linked in the timeline below for your choosing. Let's start with my process for designing custom furniture for clients. Both VD Handcrafted and Luke Savignac were curious about design, and I've actually gotten this question a ton over the years. So I'm going to give you an overview of my process from initial client contact all the way through to delivering this bed. My background is in software design, and after creating apps and websites for Fortune 500 companies for over a decade, I actually learned that the client relationship is the linchpin of the design process. Since I build custom furniture now, I'm going to show you how I applied many of those same skills to create the Cozy King together with my client. Even if you're not being commissioned to build furniture, you likely still have stakeholders who care about the final outcome, like family members or friends. New projects are almost always born as a text or an offhand comment at a casual hangout. It's important to listen closely and make note of the details they share because they'll expect you to recall them even if you start their project 6 months later. Recently, I've been building out a Trello board that helps me record important information that potential clients share with me early on and keep track of my process. For example, my next project is a music studio standing desk, and my friend sent me some photos for inspiration. I made a note of my initial estimate, and I'm actually doing my first brand partnership with FlexiSpot, so I saved a link to the standing desk I'll be using. For the Cozy King, my clients Jose and Jess created a shared note after I asked them some questions about their style in our discovery call. I also use an app called Freehand on both my iPad and Mac to capture notes during calls, calculate my estimates, and most importantly, sketch out my ideas. Whenever I build a piece of furniture that has a regulated or standardized component, like mattress size in this case, I tend to pull up a few retailers like Crate & Barrel, Room & Board, and Thomas Moser to check out their dimensions to see what some common ranges are. You can even find the assembly instructions in many cases, which can be super helpful to see what components you want to include or avoid in your own design. I also highly recommend reading the reviews on a design similar to what you're building to see what customers don't like or even where a product has failed. Lol, wood movement. I kind of obsessed over internal mattress opening on this project because the gap around the mattress on the bed I built for our own home was a bit too big, and it's always been kind of sloppy and bothered me. For the Cozy King, I went with 76.5 by 80.5 and inset the mattress down 1 inch along the rails to create a snug fit without making it annoying to change the sheets, which was something I saw people complain about in reviews. When it comes time to start sketching out a new design, it can be helpful to browse through books for ideas, and I tend to pull a few photos into freehand to inspire me as I start to quickly get ideas out of my head for potential directions. This time around, I tried something new by actually sketching on top of my client's favorite reference photo since I knew it had the basic form they liked. Once I got the structure sketched out, I moved the photo and riffed on unique ideas that incorporated elements I knew my clients wanted. Once I feel confident in a few directions, I use a tool called Loom to record a video and email it to my clients to watch on their own time. This creates less delays in my process since scheduling meetings can take days, whereas Loom allows my client to review my work whenever it works best for them. After I received approval on the conceptual direction for the bed, I started working out the details in Shaper 3D, which is a CAD program for designing 3D models. The top 3 reasons I design in CAD is that it creates alignment with my clients because we can see the same thing in our heads. I can easily edit the design because I'm bound to get requests for changes. And I make way less mistakes in my shop because I can produce 2D technical drawings that guide my work. which, by the way, these plans, like many of my builds, are for sale on my website. Link in the description. Now, I want to take you back to 2019 to tell you about a project where none of that alignment happened, which gave me the motivation to learn CAD. I was stoked to get an order from a repeat client who commissioned these nesting coffee tables. But when I delivered this side table to them, the first words out of their mouth were, "That's too small." I was shocked because I built the piece exactly as they described it. As I did the walk of shame out of their house, they threw in, "Oh yeah, and we want it to be red." Would have been nice to tell me that a month ago. It's easy to want to villainize your client when something goes wrong. But most of the time, when I stop and reflect on a problem, I realize there's something I could have done to create a better outcome. And ultimately, that is my job, not theirs. In this case, I realized I essentially designed the piece behind a veil.
Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
And it wasn't until delivery day that they really understood what I was building. When I build a 3D model, it's like I get to build the piece before I build the piece. And that means my client gets to see the final product, so to speak, before I deliver it. I'll show you several ways Shaper 3D helped me build the Cozy King. We were pretty far along in the design process when I thought to ask my client, "Hey, what do you not like about your current bed?" And they told me, "It's too low." Yikes, if I hadn't asked that question, I would have delivered a bed that was almost the exact same height of their current bed.
You humbug!
But when they told me that, it was easy to extend the head and footboards and raise the mattress support, which added several inches to the bed design. There's a fine line between minimal and boring, and after sitting with the design for a few days, I felt like it needed something to elevate the design. I found myself comparing the headboard design with a chair I made a while back, and I realized I could add a sense of dynamism and comfort to the headboard by tilting the top section back by 8 degrees. I turned on hidden edges to work out the joinery between the pieces, and then created detailed 2D technical drawings that enabled me to get the angles and dimensions right in the shop. The drawings feature is 100% my favorite feature and why I like using Shaper 3D. They increase my confidence in the shop and drastically reduce mistakes. Now I want to talk to you about a sneaky, simple way to improve your designs: squircles. A squircle is when a circle and a square make a baby, and it's actually one of Apple's secrets to making their products look and feel so good. App icons are a subtle but impactful example of the difference between a regular rounded rectangle and a squircle. Before iOS 7, the corner of an app icon comprised a perfect radius and a straight line, and the point where the two lines met felt oddly jarring. Thanks to Johnny Ive, designer of the iPhone, app icons after iOS 7 ditched this abrupt point of tangency in favor of curved continuity. Think of it like an on-ramp for your eye. Yes, I'm going to keep talking about squircles because a lot of furniture design is rectangles. On a deeper level, here's why I think rounded rectangles bore the eye while squircles invite curiosity. The second your eye enters the corner of a rounded rectangle, it knows what to expect. And when it exits the curve, it's like a go-kart hitting the edge of a track. But when the eye enters a squircle, it's like, ooh, what is this all about? And as soon as that moment of delight is complete, the eye smoothly merges back onto the highway. Much like many of Apple's products, the Cozy King is made up of rectangles. So I needed to make sure those shapes looked really good. Shaper 3D allows you to easily make squircles, which enabled me to make the head and footboards more interesting. And when it came time to round over the edge, I stumbled upon a happy accident. I used a standard 7/8 inch radius roundover bit, even though that's a little larger than half the radius of the 1 5/8 inch boards. This left a little peak on the edge that I needed to round over with my hand plane. Once I sanded it smooth and eased the point of tangency between the flat surface and the round edge, I realized this approach yielded roughly the same curved continuity that a bit like this would produce, which was good because that bit was too big for my router. Finally, Shaper 3D makes it wicked easy to experiment with different materials and instantly create high quality renders that helped me explore different woods and create alignment with my client before I headed to the wood store, where I like to tell my clients I can't hit Ctrl Z once I buy and cut wood. Now this all sounds a bit too good to be true. So what doesn't 3D modeling get you? It doesn't make you more creative, and there's no physics in Shaper 3D. Computers are counting machines, which can kill creativity in my opinion, especially at early stages. So always, always, always start your design process with a pencil in hand before modeling anything on a computer. Also, 3D models don't weigh anything. They don't have to hold up to any forces, and the real scale of things in your shop is bound to influence your designs.
What is this? A center for ants?
So I encourage a healthy back and forth between 3D modeling and testing things out with real materials. Speaking of materials, let's head to the wood store. We'll take a look at selecting wood and flattening wide boards by hand. Now, while I'm fully prepared to show you bucolic images of me browsing through wood, I want to start by acknowledging that buying wood can actually be really intimidating. You have to work hard to find a good store, take multiple hours out of your day. You don't really know what you're going to find when you get there, and it often smells like everyone around you is wearing the cologne Toxic Masculinity by Calvin Klein. But if you come with me, I'll show you what to look for. Let's head to the hardwood store of North Carolina, my absolute happy place. My buddy Brody asked me a while back, how do you find the right boards for your project and make sure you buy the correct amount? And since I don't want him to think I'm ignoring him because I hope he and Justin come over for whiskey again soon, I'm going to answer his question in this chapter. I'm also going to cover flattening and jointing wide boards by hand since I unexpectedly came across the most delicious boards that were far bigger than my jointer can handle, but they were too perfect for this project to pass up. The fastest way to feel totally discombobulated at the wood store is if you don't have a good understanding of what you're building. That's because unlike big box stores that carry standardized wood sizes like 2x4s and 4x8 sheets of plywood, hardwood stores stock wood that comes in all sorts of random sizes. If you don't have clear plans with you, your brain is going to constantly try and rework the design to fit the shape of the wood rather than finding the right wood that you can shape into your design. That's why I never go to the wood store until I have detailed plans approved by my client. I export 2D drawings from Shaper 3D and put them in freehand where I can scribble things on top and make note of which parts of the design I've found wood for. Subsequently, I write down what the wood is for as I select each board because the boards are bound to get mixed up when an employee needs to sort through the pile to calculate the cost. When I'm sorting through a wood pile, I'm looking for three main things: attractiveness, size, and flatness. Firstly, the wood has to draw me in, so I'm looking for a nice grain pattern. Absence of knots where a branch used to be, minimal checking on the ends from the drying process, and I want to make sure I can put the less attractive wood that grows near the center of the tree against a wall or inside a piece. Once I find a board I like, I confirm the size works for its intended use. Most boards are 96 inches or longer, so I'm usually checking the width. If a board is the size I need, I first take a look down the edge of the board to make sure it's straight enough. And I sometimes grab two straight pieces of wood to use as winding sticks, which exaggerate twist in the board because that's the hardest thing to correct. I triple check that I've bought enough wood to complete the project, and I sometimes buy an extra board if I'm concerned about making a mistake on a challenging aspect of the design, or I know I need to experiment with a particular method. Quick tip, if you want to estimate the cost of a board that's, let's say, 96 inches long by 10 inches wide, and it's 8/4 stock, which by the way, that means 2. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Not sure why they make us do division. I didn't realize that at first. Anyways, You multiply length times width times thickness, divide that number by 144, and 144 equals 12 times 1, aka a board foot. This is roughly what a board foot looks like. Then multiply the number you have by the board foot cost. So this hypothetical board in hard maple, which is $6.95 a board foot, would cost $92. Let's get this wood home so I can show you how to flatten and join big boards with a hand plane. The first step is arranging the boards like they'll be in the final product. Cutting them down to rough size so that you have the least amount of material to flatten, and then clearly marking the ends of the boards so you can keep track of things as you remove material from the faces of the boards. When I'm ready to flatten one side of the board, I first look down the edge to try and find the concave side. You flatten this side first because your hand plane will nip off the high points, yielding a flat side that you can then flip over and run through a thickness planer. If you tried to hand plane the convex side, your plane would just ride along the curve of the board, and instead of a flat board, you would just get a thinner board that's still curved. Sad. Now it's time to break out the cheapest tool in my shop, winding sticks. You place winding sticks on the ends of boards to exaggerate twist. This board has fairly severe twist, which you can see because the left side of the winding stick nearest to me is tilted high into the air, and the winding stick on the far end is tilted slightly upward on the right side. The goal of flattening the board is to make the winding sticks parallel. When I was newer to flattening boards by hand, I found it useful to use a strip of paper to exaggerate the twist in the board in order to understand where I needed to remove the most material and mark the board accordingly. If a board has moderate to severe twist, I recommend using a sharp scrub plane blade, which you can retrofit to most any plane. A curved plane blade enables you to take big bites out of the wood to speed up the process. Be sure to change up your position if you have a lot of boards to plane to avoid fatiguing one set of muscles. Continue to check your progress using the winding sticks, and when they're close to parallel, switch to a plane with a traditional flat iron to do the final flattening. When the winding sticks are finally parallel, give yourself a high five, wipe the sweat off your brow, and enjoy the sweet sound of your thickness planer. And if you don't have winding sticks, make a pair yourself and don't go crazy. Mine are literally offcuts from the bottoms of the doors I made for my shed. Quick tip, when you're running wide boards through a thickness planer, you're bound to get tear out because there's more opportunity for undulating grain direction across a larger surface. To mitigate that, rub a very damp cloth over the problem areas to soften the fibers and reduce tear out. Now that the boards are flat and planed to the desired thickness, it's time to joint the long edges before gluing them together. Since these boards are too long and heavy for my little baby jointer, I'll be doing them by hand. Before I start, I sharpen my plane iron since I'll want thin, long, continuous shavings along the edge of each board to create a seamless glue joint. My sharpening process only takes a few minutes, and notice my edge is not as honed as a Hubble Space Telescope lens. If you can't tell, I try and get people to relax and get woodworking. Once I remove the saw marks, I check for square along the edge. Light is your friend as you look for small gaps under the square, which will tell you which sides to remove wood from. I like to keep a bright light on towards the end of my bench that makes it easy for me to check for square. To fix anything that's out of whack, hang your plane off the edge and guide it with your fingers to nip off wood from the edge. Go back and take one continuous shaving and repeat the process until the edge is square all the way down. Oftentimes, I create a spring joint before gluing boards together by planing a few shavings from the middle of the boards. This makes a very slight curve along the edges that, when clamped together, creates a bit of suction between the boards and the joint. Flattening and joining boards together with a hand plane is a process that is challenging, but doable. And I want to tell you a shocking truth to encourage you to try this process. No one has made a board perfectly flat and 90 degrees ever in the history of mankind. It is mathematically impossible to do either of those things with real materials. Life is not CAD. This means it's up to you to decide when things are good enough. And this notion was incredibly liberating when I learned it. Because if you look close enough, you're bound to notice a surface still isn't perfectly flat or an edge isn't exactly 90 degrees.
Oh, great!
But instead of getting frustrated and giving up, just realize you are in the same boat as everyone else. You'll get better over time and never make someone feel like they have to be perfect in order to try. Now it's time for the segment you've all been waiting for. Will it squeak? So I had originally planned this Will It Squeak bit pretty much completely as a joke because I knew the design was rock solid and that it wasn't going to squeak for lack of strength. But there was one thing I did not foresee, which was these slats being able to move in this direction a bit. And it squeaks. So I got a little desperate and thought, well, maybe if it's like more spread out and there's like a cloth, you know, this is simulating the mattress, maybe then it wouldn't squeak, but still squeaks. You gotta test this stuff though. So I think I have a solve for this. What I'm gonna do is take a domino and put it in this center support, and it will go up into the slat, which will prevent it from moving this way, which is what's making it kind of creak against the wood. So we'll see if that works. Okay, so came up with a much simpler solution than putting a domino under each one of these, which I'm happy about, which was I'm just gonna use spacer blocks to make the slats not move in the center portion, which I'm happy with this solution because it's essentially the same solution as the side, and it's pretty easy to do. So feeling good about this. So I got all of the little spacer blocks glued in, and I'm praying this works. Okay, moment of truth. Oh, yes. No squeak, no creak. I almost forgot. Probably the place that most commonly squeaks on a bed for people is the rail to headboard connection, where when you move back and forth, you get some squeak here. But this is my first time using the DF700 connectors in a bed. These are the same ones I used in the crib, which I guess is still a bed, but first time using it in a big bed. And these are amazing. Let me go grab one. This is the hardware that is inside of the bed right now. There's 3 pieces to it. There's an expansion anchor that lodges into the headboard or leg posts if your design has them. I like to get fancy and glue a domino around the anchor to permanently embed it and support the anchor bolt. Then there's a cross anchor that goes in the rails and catches the bolt using a set screw. When you assemble the pieces, you use a hex wrench to draw the connection together. And I use like 1 drop of Loctite. This is 222 MS. It's their low strength. I put a drop of Loctite on that set screw, and that makes sure vibration is not going to make this anchor come loose and wiggle and squeak. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, let's do the originally planned segment called Will It Squeak? Because the last thing I want to interrupt in my clients' lives is their sleep. What do you think I was thinking about? So to make sure I don't interrupt their sleep, I'm going to simulate sleep with hand tool methods. Maybe in the middle of the night, you're craving a hand tool job. Let's see if it squeaks. No squeak. Or maybe you're like me and you like using the edge of the bed as a mox-on vise. No squeak. By the way, these are 100% real tests because I really want to know if it squeaks. Or maybe you're just getting out of bed in the middle of the night to go pee. Let's see if it creaks. No creak. This is ridiculous, but I really want to know. No squeak, no creak. I'd say that's Craftsman approved. I'm shipping it. But the real proof is a 10 out of 10 review from my client. I want to give a huge shout out to Dinkle's Workshop because she asked the question via my poll, how do you make a bed not squeak? And I honestly don't think I would have tested the bed as vigorously or ridiculously unless she asked, so thank you. I'm grateful for that because I'm pretty sure my client would have felt a little too awkward to be like, hey Courtney, we made the bed squeak real loud last night. But Jose and Jess, if you're listening, please tell me if you ever need anything, because I guarantee my work for a lifetime of great... I forgot to mention, if you want to hang out for some bonus features, I'm going to show you in detail how I made the head and footboards and did all the joinery and all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments what you would like to see in my upcoming music studio standing desk build video. And like and subscribe and maybe even give me a super thanks, so I can convince my wife that all this time I spend in my basement pretending I'm the woodworking version of Stephen Colbert is worth it. Now turn that thing off and go make something.